Let's go to the 71st question. A person X can complete 20% of work in 8 days, and another person Y can complete 25% of the same work in 6 days. If they work together, in how many days will 40% of the work be completed? So they say that X can complete 20% of the work in 8 days. So to complete 100% of the work, he would need 20 into 5, that is 8 into 5 over here, that is 40 days. So in a day, how much of the work would X complete? X should complete 1 by 40th of the work in one day. Similarly, if we look for Y, Y completes 25% of the work in 6 days, of the same work in 6 days. Okay. So Y will complete 25% of the work in 6 days. That means he will complete 100% of the work in multiplied by 4, that is 6 into 4, 24 days. So in a single day, Y would complete only 1 by 24th of the work, whereas for X it is 1 by 40th of the work. So the question they ask us is that in how many days will 40% of the work be completed? They're not bothered about the entire work being completed. So if X and Y work together, then in how many days would 40% of the work be completed? 40% can be written as 40 by 100, which is nothing but 2 by 5. So when X and Y work together in a single day, they complete 1 by 40 plus 1 by 24 of the work, 24th of the work. So let me take the LCM of 24 and 40, that would be 120. So I can represent this as 3 by 120 plus 5 by 120, which is nothing but 8 by 120, which in turn is nothing but 1 by 15, right? So we need to reach 40 by 100, that is 40% of the work. So if I say 1 by 15th of the work in a single day, then this 1 by 15 needs to be multiplied by a factor. Let us call it as m, where m represents the number of days. This is for one day. If I multiplied by m, I would know how much work is completed in m days. And this should be equivalent to 2 by 5, that is 40%. So we will get m is equal to 2 by 5 into 15. 15 cancels out with 5. 2 into 3 is 6. So let's check out for option, if there's any option with 6 as the answer. We come far along. Now option A is the right answer. 6 days. In the 72nd question, we have a car travels from a place X to place Y at an average speed of v kilometers per hour. From Y to X at an average speed of 2v kilometers per hour. Again from X to Y at an average speed of 3v kilometers per hour. And again from Y to X at an average speed of 4v kilometers per hour. Then the average speed of the car for the entire journey is option A less than v kilometers per hour. Option B lies between v and 2v kilometers per hour. Option C lies between 2v and 3v kilometers per hour. Or option D lies between 3v and 4v kilometers per hour. Let's just assume that X and Y are two cities. Let's assume they are Bangalore and Chennai, okay, for convenience. And the distance between them is 300 kilometers. Initially, the car moves with the speed of v kilometers per hour. So let's assume that v is also equivalent to 300. Okay, it's 300 kilometers per hour. So what time I to take for me to reach Y from X? That would be 1 hour. In the second case, when we come back from Y to X, we increase the speed to 2v kilometers per hour. So our speed now becomes 600 kilometers per hour. Right? So if I'm traveling at 600 kilometers per hour for a distance of 300 kilometers, the distance does not change. So I would cover this distance in 0.5 hours or 30 minutes. Okay, so initial time T1 is 1 hour. This time it should be T2, not V. So I'll just delete it and write it again. So T2 is 0.5 hours. And I increase my speed velocity to 3v. That would mean I would now travel at a speed of 900 kilometers per hour, and it would take me just 20 minutes. 300 by 900 is 1 by 3, so it will take me 1 by 3 hours or 20 minutes only. Similarly, we would get T4 is equal to 1 by 4. Okay, I'll just write down T4 because T4 is 4v. V is 300. So to travel 300 kilometers with a speed of 1200 kilometers per hour, it would take me only 1.4 hours. So if I add all this, T1 plus T2 plus T3 plus T4, that would be 1 plus 1 by 2 plus 1 by 3 plus 1 by 4 into T. Let's assume that the time taken initially to reach y from x at a speed of v kilometer per hour is t. Okay, and we don't need to use t here. We can use 1. So we can just keep the example instead of getting into x and y. So the time taken for me would be, so let me just take the LCM of the denominators of 2, 3 and 4. That would be 12. So this is nothing but 12 plus 6 plus 4 plus 3 by 12, which in turn is nothing but 25 by 12, which is slightly more than 2. So it would take me 2 point say some hours. Just for convenience, I would write it's actually 2.083 if I'm not wrong. So just I'll write it as 2.08 hours. Okay, to reach 300 kilometers. So not 300 kilometers, 1200 kilometers, because we are going from x to y and y to x and x to y and y to x again. That is Bangalore to Chennai, Chennai to Bangalore, Bangalore to Chennai, and Chennai to Bangalore again. So that would be 1200 kilometers for me. So I am traveling 1200 kilometers in 2.08 hours. So what is my average speed? We'll not call it v, we'll call it s. So what is my average velocity or speed, whatever it is? It is 1200 by 2.08. See, 1200 by 2 is 600, but 1200 by 2.08 is slightly less than 600. It is somewhere like 590 something point whatever. So this in turn lies between 300 and 600, right? That is nothing but v and 2v. So this is what they're asking in the question. What is the average speed of the car for the entire journey? It lies somewhere between v and 2v. That is option B is the right answer. So let's go to the 73rd question. Consider the following statements. Number 1. The minimum number of points of intersection of a square and a circle is 2. 2. The maximum number of points of intersection of a square and circle is 8. Which of the above statements are correct? 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, or neither 1 nor 2. So let me draw a square first and a circle somewhere over here in just joining this square. Okay, so here I have just one point, but this is not the solution because it doesn't intersect the square. So I'll just bring the circle a little bit inside the square. then in any situation I would have two points of intersection. I'll call it A and I'll call it point B. So you can't avoid it. The moment the circle intersects is like cutting across. Okay, if I draw something like this, then that is not intersection, that is just tangential um, meeting of the two geometrical figures. Okay, so the minimum number of points of intersection of a square and circle is 2. This is right. Let's go to the maximum number of possibilities, the maximum number of points of intersection of a square and circle. So I'll draw a circle, I draw a square first, and I draw a circle within the square, just fitting within the square. Now these again are not intersecting the square, okay, but when I expand its radius by a bit, then I would have something like this, a square. I, I draw it in a better form. I draw it again here with a lot of space. So we have something like this, and I have a circle which comes out like this, something like this. So here we have 8 points, A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever you'd like to name it, E, F, G. So we know that the maximum number of points of intersection of a square and a circle is 8. So option C, both 1 and 2 is the right option. Let's go to the 74th question. A man takes half time in rowing a certain distance downstream than upstream. What is the ratio of the speed in still water to the speed of the current? So supposing the boat has a speed of say 50 kilometers per hour, and there's a river over here, and its speed is say 10 kilometers per hour, and the boat is rowing in the same direction, then the speed of the boat would now be 50 plus 10, that is 60 kilometers per hour. If the speed of this river, if you're moving, this is when you're moving downstream. If you're moving upstream, that is in the reverse direction of the current, then the speed of the boat would be 50 minus 10, that is 40 kilometers per hour. So we have this background with us now, and it will help us solve this question. So they say that it takes 2 times more time in covering a distance upstream. Okay, so let's assume the speed of row in still water as m. So the speed of the row or boat upstream will be m plus l, and the speed of the row downstream, the speed of the row or boat upstream would be m minus l kilometers per hour, and the speed of the row downstream would be m plus l kilometers per hour. They say that it takes half the time in rowing downstream, which means this velocity m plus l is 2 times m minus l. If it takes you half the time to reach a place, then that also means that your velocity is 2 times your initial velocity or the normal velocity. So if I work it out, m plus l is equal to 2m minus 2l over here, 2m minus 2l, then I would end up with 3l if you take minus 2l to the left hand side and m to the right hand side. So we have 3l is equal to m. They are asking us the ratio of the speed in still water to the speed of the current. That is, they are asking us what is m by l. So if I take l to the right hand side, then I have 3 is equal to m by l. So the option is option D, 3 is to 1. Let's go to the 75th question. How many pairs of natural numbers are there such that the difference of whose squares is 63? Options are A3, B4, C5 and D2. When you say that difference whose squares is 63, so if the numbers are A and B, so let's assume the numbers are A and B. So what that would mean is a square minus b square is equal to 63, which in turn means a plus b multiplied by a minus b will be equal to 63. So what are the factors of this number 63? We already know that 9 into 7 gives us 63. 9 and 7 are factors of 63. The other factors of 63 are 1 and 63 and 1 itself. 1 and 63 itself. Okay. So a plus b either has to be 9 or 63. So there are two cases. We'll work out those two cases. We don't need to work out, we just need to figure out the number of possible values. And what exactly are they asking? How many pairs of natural numbers? So we have already seen there are two pairs of natural numbers. That is, you can express it as 9,7 or 7,9. It doesn't make any difference. And 63,1 or 1,63. So you have two such pairs. So option D is the right answer. In case you want to verify this, then we can work out here. We can say this one, a plus b is 9 and a minus b is equal to 7. So this would leave us at 2a is equal to 16, which in turn indicates that a is 8 and b is 1. And if you look at it, 8 square minus a square minus b square is equal to 64 minus 1 is 63. So it satisfies our requirement. And in the second pair, that is 63,1, we have a plus b is equal to 63 and a minus b is equal to 1, which tells us that 2a is 64, which in turn tells us that a is 32, and since a minus b is equal to 1, then we know that b is equal to a minus 1, which means b is equal to 31. So if we find out a square minus b square, then that would be 32 square minus 31 square. So let's work out what is 32 square. That is 30 plus 2 the whole square, which is nothing but 900 plus 2 into 30 into 2 plus 4, which in turn is nothing but 900 plus 120 plus 4, which is 1024. And 31 square is 31 into 31. 31 with 1 gives 31. 31 into 3 gives 93. And when I add it, I get 1961. So 1024 minus 961 will give us 3 here, 12, 6, 10, 63. Okay. So we have confirmed these pairs to be the right pairs. So we have confirmed our pairs, and option D is the right answer. Let's go to the 76th question. Which one of the following will have a minimum change in its value if 5 is added to both numerator and denominator of the fractions 2 by 3, 3 by 4, 4 by 5 and 5 by 6? So we are adding 5 to both numerator and denominator. Suppose we have a value, say 1 by 2, okay, and I add 5 to both numerator and denominator, I would have 1 plus 5 by 2 plus 5, which is like 6 by 7, which is almost close to 1. So from 1 by 2, from 0.5, I move to 1, which is an increase of almost by 100%, almost. But say I have a number which is like 500 divided by 501. and I add 5 to both numerator and denominator, okay, so then I would get something like 505 by 506. You see, in both the cases, the difference between the denominator and numerator is just 1. In this case, the difference is just 1, 2 minus 1. And even here, it is 501 minus 1 will give us 500, the numerator. But in this case, the initial value was close to 1, and the final value after adding 5 to both the numerator and denominator still is closer to 1. So there's no significant change. And this is because this is a higher number. The second case, it's a higher number. So when we talk about, so let me delete all that I have written over here. And so when we talk about causing an impact, the impact is most to the lower number. So which one of the following will have a minimum change in its value? That would be the largest number, that is 5 by 6 in this case. So option D is the right answer. In the 77th question, we have a digit n is greater than 3 is divisible by 3 but not divisible by 6. Which one of the following is divisible by 4? A 2n, B 3n, C 2n plus 4, or D 3n plus 1. They say a digit n is greater than 3, so the possible combination is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's divisible by 3, so only 6 and 9 are divisible by 3 but not divisible by 6. So 6 is eliminated and we are left with only 9. 9 is not divisible by 6 but is divisible by 3. So which of the following is divisible by 4? 2n. 2n is nothing but 2 into 9, that is 18. 18 is not divisible by 4. So this is not the right answer. 3n is 3 into 9, that is 27. 27 is not divisible by 4. Okay. So 2n plus 4 is 18 plus 4, that is 22. 22 is not divisible by 4. 3n plus 1 is 3 into 9 plus 1, which is 27 plus 1, which in turn is 28, is actually divisible by 4. So option D is the right answer. In the 78th question we have, if 1 liter of water weighs 1 kg, then how many cubic millimeters of water will weigh 1.1 gram? See, this is like a standard thing which we need to know. 10 centimeters cube of any object, if it holds water, then that will be equivalent to 1 liter. Okay, so this can be written as 1000 cubic centimeters, okay, is equivalent to 1 liter, which in turn is like saying 100 millimeter cube is equivalent to 1 liter. So this is something which we need to know. Okay, so 100 millimeter cube will give us 10 to 1 million cubic millimeters, 6 zeros. Okay, this is equivalent to 1 liter. So when in the question, as they say, 1 liter of water weighs 1 kg, then how many cubic millimeters of water will weigh 0.1 gram? So we know that 0.1 gram is equal to 1 kilogram by 10 to the power 4, 10,000. Okay, so here we have 1 million cubic millimeter, which is equivalent to 1 liter. If you divide it by 10 to the power 4, then you should eliminate 4 zeros from the numerator, then you will get the answer as 100, which is found in option C. Then 100 cubic millimeters of water will weigh 0.1 gram. In the 79th question, we have A vessel full of water weighs 40 kg. If it is one third filled, its weight becomes 20 kg. What is the weight of the empty vessel? So there are two things here with weight. One is the vessel. So let's call that weight as V, and the weight of water as W. Okay. So the vessel, say there is a vessel over here like this. It has its own weight V, and then you pour some water on it, water inside it. That weight would be W. Okay. So initially, when the vessel is full of water, you would feel the entire weight of the water. So the initial weight would be V plus W, which is 40 kilograms. And the water is one third filled, the vessel is one third filled, then the weight of the water would also reduce to 1 by 3. So now the weight would be V plus 1 by 3 W, because the vessel would weigh anyways, whether you fill it with water or not. But it's the weight of the water that changes. This is equivalent to 20. So now I will work this out. Equation 1 and equation 2. Equation 1 minus equation 2 would give me W minus 1 by 3 W, that is 2 by 3 W, is equal to 20, which implies that W is equal to 20 into 3 by 2. So the weight of the entire weight of the water is equivalent to 30 kilograms. And if we use this in equation 1, then we know that V plus W is 40, which in turn means V plus 30 is 40, which in turn means that V is equal to 40 minus 30 is equal to 10. So the weight of the vessel is 10 kilograms, which is option A. So guys, we have reached the last question in the mathematics part, the 80th question. A frog tries to come out of a dried well 4.5 meter deep with slippery walls. Every time the frog jumps 30 centimeters, he slides down 15 centimeters. What is the number of jumps required for the frog to come out of the well? See, in normal situation, you would do something like, see, this is a 4.5 meter deep wall. Okay. So what it does is, it goes up by 30 centimeters, 30 cms, and then comes down by 15 cms. So effectively it has climbed 15 cms in one round. Okay, in one jump basically. So normally what you would do is that you would do 4.5 meter by the 15 centimeters, which is covered in one jump, and you would get this value as 30 jumps. But when the frog completes its 28th jump, it is already at 4.2 meters. Okay, it would have gone up to 4.35 meters, and it would have slipped down to 4.2 meters by the end of the 28th jump. We know that 28 into 0.15 gives us 4.2. 0.15 is the 15 centimeter we are talking about. Okay, so when it goes on its 29th jump, it initially jumps 30 centimeters, and thus it reaches the top of the wall. So it doesn't slide back again because it has already reached the top. Here in these cases, in between somewhere over here, it used to slide down due to the slippery wall. But from 4.2 meter, when it jumps to 4.5 meters, there is no question of slipping down. So the number of jumps required is 28 plus 1, that is 29. So option B is the right answer.